free. You can donate £3 and sponsor a Quran to a loved one, a neighbour, a colleague or a friend. We distribute Qurans totally free of charge across the whole UK, including in prisons. Please call us now to contribute on 0300 030 1951 or email us on dawah@minhajuk.org.
Looking to get your finances in order? MR Accountants has you covered. We provide a
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم قال رب اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي أمري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقهوا قولي صدق الله مولانا العظيم. Dear listeners on Revive FM and to our viewers on Facebook and YouTube, Assalamu alaikum. We've got a very, very, very special show for you today, something that directly affects every Muslim that's living in Newham today. If not today, then definitely in the future. I've got a guest lineup, some brilliant guests with me, which I will be introducing one by one. We are live on Facebook, we are live on YouTube, and we've got the option to see all the comments that come through. So we'd like everybody to definitely contribute towards the program. Give us your opinions, give us your thoughts, and we will discuss those in further detail. The program today is in regards to burial provisions in Newham, specifically in Newham, and what we can do in taking this matter forward. An organization has been set up specifically to have a look at this matter, and we'll get further information from them. I've got three very, very special guests with me today. Mr. Mohamed Omar, Mr. Kamran Yusuf, and Mr. Zulfiqar. So I won't do the introductions. I'd like for them to do their own introduction. So if I start with Brother Kamran first, if you would just give your introduction, your name, where you are from, which mosque you represent, just a little bit about yourself, and then we'll move forwards.
Okay, assalamu alaikum everyone. First of all, thanks to Revive Radio for really having this show for us. So my name is Kamran Yusuf Qureshi. I am from Anjuman Islamia Newham, High Street North. My current position is General Secretary at the moment. And we are among the first masjid in Newham who are providing the funeral services for almost past 30 years. So I would say we have quite good knowledge and background in this particular field.
Fantastic. And secondly, I'd like to ask Mr. Zulfiqar if they could just give their own introduction, which mosque they're from, and what work they undertake at the masjid.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah. Jazakallah khair, Umar, inviting us for this very important and crucial issue. I am from UKIM, which is located on the junction of Park Street. We've been the for years now, so the funeral service started years ago, and we are one of the three centers. My role generally is to technical side of it. I was involved with the construction of 2009. I'll provide
So I think we're just having a bit of technical issues in terms of listening to Brother Zulfiqar. He's just been coming in and out. So if I just let everybody know, Brother Zulfiqar is representative of UKIM Masjid Ibrahim, the one in Plaistow, just right next to Green Street, and he's been helping out with the funeral care services there for a number of years. I believe he said 2009. So there's three main masjids in Newham that provide funeral care services. So Anjuman Islam, as Brother Kamran, the representative of, and Brother Zulfiqar from Masjid Ibrahim, UKIM, and Minhaj-ul-Quran as well. They provide the funeral services. And then we've got our chief guest here today, who's going to be doing the bulk of the talking as well. He loves to talk as well, mashallah. He's very well versed. I think you should introduce yourself. I could go on for ages and ages, but I think you'll be best qualified in introducing yourself, Brother Umar.
Jazakallah khair. Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. I think the introduction has already been made. So, I think people already know me in most sense. My name is Mohamed Omar. I'm one of the board members of Gardens of Peace. And my role is also not only for locally, but also nationally, because I chair the National Burial Council, where all the Muslim representatives who deal with end of life and funeral services are part of it. And then I represent the Muslim community at national level in terms of governments, departments, in terms of coroners, registrars, medical examiners. So anything to do with death, end of life, and burials is what I get involved in. And therefore, I've been told that I know a bit about this subject, and Omar said that I should come and talk about it. But I'm sure I don't know as much as he knows or anybody else knows.
That's a bit of an understatement where you're saying you don't have that much knowledge. You've got a wealth of knowledge, mashallah. So the brothers, I'm sure everyone that's listening, everyone that's viewing, everyone that's going to watch this even afterwards, because it will be available for recording afterwards, everyone's been to the Garden of Peace. Garden of Peace is flagship, if you can call it, in terms of East London anyway, in terms of the burial sites. And if you could just give us a little bit of background on Garden of Peace before we come onto the local issues in Newham specifically. So where it came into existence, how you guys are getting on. Mashallah, I've heard you've bought a third site now as well. So you're filling up very, very quickly as well. So if you could just give us a bit of background for those that don't know about the Garden of Peace.
Just a very quick background. Gardens of Peace really started from the concept that there were certain individuals which stayed in Redbridge and were living in Redbridge rather, and they were worried that, we are first generation in this country. Should something happen to us, do we have a sufficient burial space which we could be buried in accordance with our Islamic requirements? And the answer was no. So there was a council cemetery which would have a small allocation for a Muslim site, but it was not fully in compliance with our requirements. So therefore, 4 individuals initially started the project. There are 4 trustees, even as of today. And they started the concept of it. And we managed, alhamdulillah, to buy a piece of land, which was the first site in Elmbridge Road, 21.5 acres. Just to hasten to add that none of the individuals and also the others like myself and 1 or 2 others who joined straight afterwards, had no knowledge how to run a cemetery. But the idea was that we need something for a Muslim provision. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala smiled on us and made it possible for us to start this project. So when we started the project, the first site in Elmbridge Road, it had a capacity of about approximately 10,000 adult graves and about 6,000 to 7,000 children, fetuses, and neonatals. We thought very, very naively that, based on the statistics we had at that time, that we would be able to last for at least 75 years. So we said that at least our lifetime, we don't need to be worried about it. We were being selfish in one respect to say, well, as long as in our lifetime everything is okay, we didn't worry about it too much. And lo and behold, in the first couple of years, it was not an issue. But thereafter, I think after 5 years, it really exploded. And lo and behold, in 15 years of operation, the Gardens of Peace, the first site, was full for adults. So that's the background. Why did that take off so much? We believe that, one of the reasons was the fact that the demographics in the region was changing. Secondly, a lot of people now saw that there was a proper provision available and were now a bit more dissuaded from trying to send their loved ones back to their hometown. Thirdly, we were maintaining in accordance with Islamic principles. And fourthly, the most important thing would be that we would be available 7 days a week, 365 days a year. So people who were not having current provisions at weekends and bank holidays, as by default, they used to come to our cemetery. And that's what really took everything off, which resulted that we had to buy an additional piece of land, which is the current the third piece of land which you are talking about was the second piece of land we actually bought. But that was not come to fruition because of planning difficulties. And then the second site, which we are operating at the moment, is what we bought in 2016, around that time, and started the burial in about 2018. So till date, we have buried in Gardens of Peace approximately in both the sites, including children and adults and everything together, just under 24,000 people. So you can imagine. We are the largest dedicated Muslim cemetery in the entire country. We are also a charitable organization, but we do operate with burial fees. The only reason being is that we wanted to operate on a social enterprise basis, whereby we would not have to go back to the community every now and again. So we just wanted to make sure that we were sustainable. And that was the model we started to work on. One of the things which I would like to hasten to add is the fact that setting up Gardens of Peace was not a straightforward aspect of it. As you might think now that, oh, well, everything is done, everything works so well, but it was not the case, because we had a lot of problems in terms of trying to get planning permission. In the first site, just to let you know that when we bought the site, as is customary, when you apply for planning permission, that you would need to consult your neighbors. We did in good faith, not realizing that the headquarters of the BNP was literally behind our site. So when we had our first meeting, we are expecting 80 people or so. We dished out tea, coffee, and all of a sudden there was an influx of about 200 to 300 people, mainly from the BNP. And I think the issue here was that they were not trying to be racist at that stage. I think it was a lack of understanding. They just thought if a Muslim cemetery comes in, they will have 5-time prayers, there was a stream running through, bodies will be floating. So I think once the argument went through and people understood what our concept was, there was a lot of mindset change. And I think today a lot of the neighbors themselves really are appreciative of the fact that the area around them now has actually enhanced and then been transformed. Mm-hmm. So I think that is one of the reasons. But the only reason I mentioned the difficulties is that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala always mentions that there's nothing you can get without actually facing difficulties. When you face difficulties, and if you persevere with the sole intention of pleasing Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He will open doors that you did not even think of. And just to give that example in the context of Gardens of Peace, when our first site was about to fill up, the second site which we bought, we were having major difficulties in trying to get planning permission. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, none be known to us, we had no idea. Literally 1 mile away from us, where the second site, 5 Oaks, became available. And not only it became available, it already had planning permission. Can you imagine? So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, you have thought all along that you want to serve the community. I will open doors for you. And this is what happened. Literally, had this site not become available, we would not have had a site to bury people. So this is the continuity aspect of it. So I think if you really want to know even more detail, I would have to be here for 5 hours to tell you the whole thing. But I think in a nutshell, the reason why Gardens of Peace, the biggest problem being Gardens of Peace and its success has been, the problem has made the other boroughs really very lax in the sense to provide provision. They all thought Gardens of Peace is there. Why should we even bother to provide? Because there's a Muslim cemetery, they do everything. And by default, all of them used just to come to Gardens of Peace. So the main boroughs in the East London area just sort of said, okay, we don't need to focus on it anymore because we've got the provision is already been provided by the community itself. And that has been one of the major problems why there has been no real focus on provisions in boroughs where we are now actually fighting to try and get burial space. And that brings me neatly onto Newham. So this is the reason why we decided that, listen, this particular model is not sustainable. We are a charity. We have 3 sites. We can't continue all along. Also, inshallah, it's not that we don't want to, but at the same time, we do feel that boroughs have really neglected their duties in not providing burial space. So we really feel that time has now come whereby burial space should be provided by each borough for their residents. Whether they use it or not is immaterial, but the provision should be there for all nationalities and all cultures. The borough should provide burial space for them. I think I'll keep quiet for the time.
Thank you. That was very, very, very comprehensive on your side. Brother Kamran, if I just bring you in, alhamdulillah, the work that Garden of Peace is doing, it's commendable, it's fantastic. And I'm sure everyone that's listening or watching or will watch in the future have either visited or have someone in their family that's visited the Garden of Peace, and they can vouch for how brilliant the service is. If we were to park that to a side and say, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, if they didn't give them the tawfiq to actually set up the Garden of Peace, which I'm sure they will get the ajr for, what are the provisions in place currently in Newham, for instance? Because I believe we'll come to the exact numbers, etc., shortly. But let's say if Garden of Peace wasn't available to the Muslim community of Newham, where would they be burying their loved ones?
At the moment, we have Woodgrange Cemetery, which is a privately owned cemetery.
The one on Romford Road?
On Romford Road, yes. It's a privately owned. Previously, the location wasn't really very pleasant. People used to walk in and the graves were not in good state. Then, I think about 20 years ago, there was a group of Muslims started some campaign, and the Newham Council given them a place in West Ham Cemetery. Again, that I can tell you from our own experience, from our own mosque, that last year, I think I would say even last 10 years, we only had one burial in that space. So that can tell us the usability and the facilities are there, not really suitable for Muslims. And at the moment, I would say, I think for the Garden of Peace is the main cemetery for all of us. In last year, we had about 34 deaths, and about 80 to 85% were going to Garden of Peace.
Oh.
And if they weren't there, then we don't know where really we would have gone to. The people who are burying at Woodgrange, I think mainly because they already have family members there and they wanted to be with them. Otherwise, we had very negative feedback for that cemetery. So I think it's really eye-opener for us to work for that. And before I go, I think I will ask Brother Umar just to explain the process from the procurement to make the site ready. How long does it take? So I think this will set us a piece for us to think and work on that.
Brother Kamran, just to add a few things on the facilities you have at this, provisions you have at the moment. There is West Ham. The late Abdul Karim Sheikh, may Allah grant him Jannah, did through Stephen Teams, who was, I think at that time, the council leader, your MP, they managed to secure 50 spaces in West Ham. Can you imagine, over 20 years? There's nothing left now, but it is not really in a fit state, and I don't think anybody really would want to utilize it. And that is borne by the fact that you can see that even 50 spaces has taken so long for people to utilize. And secondly, Woodgrange primarily is a recycled site. It's not a virgin land. And obviously, in some cases, it's not even oriented correctly towards Mecca. Coming on to the duration it takes from concept to fruition, we believe anything from 3 to 5 years. Okay. It can even take longer depending on the obstacles. So just to let you know that I think we bought our land in the second piece of land which we bought, which is a third now for in terms of utilization. We purchased that land somewhere around 2009, I think, to the best of my knowledge. It's only going to be ready later on this year. So you just think how long it's taken is because we had massive challenges. But on average, we believe that from concept to fruition, it takes anything from 3 to 5 years. And that is why it is important that people start to worry about it from now on. You know, in terms of space, the current space we have at our second site will probably last us maybe a year. And then the third site, which we really, when we bought it, the intention was that we would try and expand our catchment area from the northeast to include part of Chelmsford and part of Essex. So really that's also on the border of the junction 28 and A12. Mm-hmm. So really we were hoping that would cater for Romford, Gidea Park, Brentwood, Shenfield, and that sort of area. But if we have to even utilize that, the number of years we'll get from that maybe 6, 7 years at tops. So altogether, we're talking about that within 8 years, being very optimistic, that is all the amount of land we have. There's no other land we have got in mind at the moment because there's nothing available. So that gives you the focus that what will happen, right? If we stop providing any provisions, what would happen to the Newham residents of Redbridge, residents of every other borough? Where would they end up? And this is why it's particularly important that people should take that into mind. You know, every day we read in the Quran, we are reminded time and again, our life in this world is temporary. Our main life is when we pass away. We are reminded 3 or 4 times in the Quran, twice definitely, Kullu nafsin zaqatul maut. Each and every one of us will die. What's not certain is the time of death. And therefore, we should try and focus that what provisions have we made. Alhamdulillah, summa alhamdulillah. Our elders made sure that we are the mosque. We have community halls. We've got mosques. We've got schools. But did we have any burial provisions? And we came in, we were the first ones to provide a burial provision for all Muslims, not for individual groups or for the Gujaratis or the Bengalis or anybody else. We really wanted, our main purpose was to focus on one aspect, that at least at death, let us have unity. What is this firqa about this and that? No, when you die, you should all be, we're all Muslims after all. And that concept, alhamdulillah, alhamdulillah, we have managed to maintain at this level as well, to say every person who's a Muslim, as long as they believe in the fundamental tenets of Islam, that is the oneness of Allah, the finality of the Prophethood, the 4 rightly guided Khalifas, the Quran and Sunnah, inshallah, they can be buried at our cemetery. So that will give you the context of why this thing is urgent now. Because I will just give you another aspect, why is it urgent? During the pandemic, when we were handling so many deaths at one time, and just to give you the real crunch when we had it, and the pinch point was in January 2021. In that month, 1 month alone, we were burying at least on average 18 to 19 people every single day for the whole month. And at that time, the trust had to take a very, very, very difficult decision that we had to turn away the residents of Tower Hamlets because they already had the provision in order to make sure that other people were not delayed in terms of their burial. So the precedent was set. We didn't take it lightly. And the moment we were able to normalize situation, immediately that decision was reversed. So my question would have been, and my question would still be, tomorrow morning we come and tell to Newham Council, sorry, we're not burying any Newham residents. What will you do?
I'd like to obviously open up the discussion as well. Some people might be thinking Brother Umar is speaking just on behalf of Garden of Peace, and it might be a biased view. So I'd like to get the masjids that are based in Newham to get their figure. So Brother Zulfiqar's on the call. He's obviously associated with Masjid Ibrahim. So Brother Zulfiqar, the vast majority of the funerals that you've conducted in the last, let's say, 4 to 5 years, where have the burials taken place? Have they been taking place at Garden of Peace, or is there an alternative that the people have, or their preference where they'd like to be buried? Brother Zulfiqar, can you hear us?
Can I hear you? Can
yes,
you hear?
please go ahead. Sorry, it was muted before.
I entirely agree with Brother Omar, what he has said about that the lack of space in Newham will be a real struggle, and we will be left, we won't have any place to bury. Majority of our funeral service has used, I would say probably 95% have gone to Garden of Peace, and very small amounts have gone to Woodgranger on the Rumford Road Cemetery. So it's a very, very small number which accommodated within Newham. So it is a big problem for Newham, and what we're trying to do now is probably we should have done a long time ago. I'm sure people agree that there was aspects of this that we've raised it with the Newham Council before, but generally they've been brushed off, and we never go anywhere. So hopefully, inshallah, with this new formation of association, we will have a better outcome from the council. We already had meetings, and as we're probably going to discuss later on, but it is a big problem for Newham, without doubt, and the majority, and I'm sure Kamran will agree also that the majority of theirs has gone to the Garden of Peace as well. So it is a big problem.
No doubt. I spoke to the funeral director of Minhaj, as on Minhaj Funeral Services, Haji Muzaffar Ali, and they've been operating since 2019. And he mentioned to me, again, similar numbers, 90% or above have been buried at Garden of Peace, except the ones that have been taken abroad, so back to their homelands. And I think he made it a point, and he said, make sure you mention this. In 5 years of operating, I think they've done one burial at West Ham and one burial at Wood Grange and a couple at Folly Lane as well in Waltham Forest. So it just goes to show, and obviously we've got the third mosque, and I'm sure your figures would be very, very similar to that as well.
As I mentioned earlier on, that we last year alone we had about 85 to 90% going to Garden of Peace, and primarily the reason is that people like that facilities and they believe that this is as per the Islamic Sharia advice, and whereas the local facilities, as we say, they're either reused land or the land is not suitable for Muslims.
So I'd like to, obviously we'll speak about the setting up of this Newham Burial Association, Muslim Burial Association, but I'd like to pose the question first. Who's to blame for this? Is this the local Muslims to blame for this? Is this the local authority to blame for this? Is it a mixture of everybody? Because when I was just looking back now, there's small pockets where there are Muslims across the UK and they've got provisions. And in this borough alone, we've got in excess of 120,000 Muslims living in Newham. So it's probably one of the highest concentrated Muslim populations in the UK. Yeah. And there's nothing to show for it. So I just want to see, I'm not trying to obviously lay the blame on anybody, but we need to obviously identify why this problem has arisen. And obviously we'll go towards the solution. But what would your suggestion be? Is that because mashallah, we've got 42, 43 masajid in Newham. So I'm quite surprised that even till date, we haven't been able to achieve anything collectively. And where would you, let's not say lie the blame, but where do you think we've lacked as maybe Muslims, or where do you think the problem lies with this?
I think we need to be brave to accept the blame. Since Garden of Peace opened, I think we've just taken our hands back and saying that, the problem is solved. Mm-hmm. Whereas, so everyone has to die. This is an absolute truth where everyone agrees on. But I am involved in the community for the last about, I would say, 20 years, and not really heard any real drive towards this cause. We have all the other problems about benefits and housing and everything, but this is the one thing where everyone has to end up, and I'm afraid that no one really seriously taken up for it. I mean, as a council, I think they will have to. I mean, there's no statutory duty on them to provide it, but as a public authority, they will have to look into their local residents and provide it. But as like all local authorities and councils and politicians, they wouldn't do anything for themselves until they've been pushed to do. And our community, I think, has taken very much sort of a backdrive on this. I would blame Garden of Peace for that, because they provided them a nice place to go, and then they just thought that is the solution. But now, as we are hearing the seriousness of this issue, that from procurement to preparation, it takes about 5 years. And where really we going to end up once the Garden of Peace is filled?
Correct. So, Brother Umar, are you willing to take the blame, number one, as mentioned? But do you think it's as simple as that, or does it?
No, I think it's not a straightforward answer, but yes, certainly I think the community has to take some blame for it. But as in everything else, yes, there is no statutory requirement for a council to provide burial space, but they are the burial authority. So all cemeteries and everything like they have to be followed by the council, and they have to provide a burial. That's a moral responsibility, which all councils have done and continue to do so. So therefore, that to say that, just to hide behind the fact that it's not a statutory responsibility, it's uncertain, doesn't wash. In terms of the Muslim community, I think they've really not been active at all. And as I think I can't hide away from the fact that because there was a provision by Gardens of Peace, people just felt that, well, why would we need to worry about burial space? And certain other Muslim communities within the borough of Newham decided that we can always have our own provisions, and which they have done over the years. And therefore, rather than thinking for the entire Muslim community in this borough, they decided to concentrate only for their own particular needs for that, which I personally believe is not correct to do so. To say that some of the councillors are to blame, I would say that yes, definitely for not continuing to press for this issue. But there were people like the late Abdul Karim Sheikh who did want to do so, and he did try his best, but he was a lone voice. He did not have the support. And at that time, I think from the political side of it, I think under the leadership of your previous mayor, I think there was no real appetite to actually even listen to what the issues were. So I think that's a combination of factors. And why do we blame the community to a certain extent, and perhaps even the politicians, is because in other boroughs, there has been a precedent set. And just look at Waltham Forest. I mean, that's the same time are we talking about Newham. At that time, Waltham Forest Muslim population was nowhere as large as the population in Waltham Forest was for the Muslim population. But yet the late Muhammad Khan made it upon himself. He made it a mission that, no, we should do something for a burial provision. And he successfully managed to convince the council to give them a piece of land just for £1. And today is what we call the Foley Lane. Walthamstow Muslim Burial Association are running Foley Lane for how many years now? And even today, the amount of money being charged by that particular trust to bury their residents in that cemetery is still less than £1,000. Now, see how a person focused on it, and he made sure that there was a provision made. So this was, okay, long time ago. Is there anything recent? Yes. Look at Barking and Dagenham. A couple of years ago, brother from Medina Mosque, Brother Ashfaq, decided to take this upon himself as well. He approached the council, and in their cemetery, which is literally about half a mile away from our second site where we are operating from, he managed to secure 500 graves, and there could be more. And that would be in terms of exactly orthodox burial, just like we do at Gardens of Peace. Not only that, but he also made sure that the council committed £350,000 to build a facility to ensure that there's a prayer area, there's a wuzu facilities, and proper toilets as well. That is now complete. It's just waiting to be opened up. So where there is, and there was pressure because they were saying, you're providing similar facilities to all your other residents. Why are the Muslims not being able to do so? So this is another example which has happened fairly recently. We are also asking Redbridge to do the same as well. Unfortunately, when we started our project, at the same time, Forest Road Cemetery, where they were supposed to make a provision for Muslims, but by default, because we had already started, that provision was never utilized. The same you can say for other areas like Hackney. You can say all the other surrounding areas were also utilizing us. And what really worked, did not work for the whole community was the fact that there were provisions provided by, say, in Carpenter's Park, which is for Harrow Cemetery, Hendon, all that. They did not provide any out-of-hours burial service in terms of weekends and also in bank holidays. So that meant all those people who couldn't bury automatically came to Gardens of Peace. And you mentioned something about in other areas. Yes, look at people like even in Ely. Cambridgeshire. Okay, how many, what's the population of Ely? Literally in the hundreds, and yet the council made sure they made provision. And I get so many calls from everywhere, South End, other areas, to say, listen, our community, the Muslim community, want a burial space. We are not experts in it. Could you please guide us as to say what are the basic requirements for Muslim burials? So there are councils throughout the country. And I'll give you one example, Bradford. Bradford is operating in such a great place as well, in the sense that the council has provided the burial space, and it's for Muslims. And not only that, they've given it to the Council of Mosques to manage the cemetery. Can you imagine that even the person who digs the grave reports to the Muslim Burial Association down there? So there is precedent set. So if people come around and say, well, this is not possible, this cannot be done. And lastly, because they will say, oh, in London, there is no land available, how can we be provided? Then I will neatly come on to Tower Hamlets. Tower Hamlets, under the first term of Lutfur Rahman, we all know Tower Hamlets, right in the center of London, did not have any cemetery. So what did Lutfur Rahman say? No, I want to provide something for my residents, the whole of Tower Hamlets, not Muslims, the entire residents. So he came into an arrangement with Camden Park, and he managed to buy 3,000 graves. And he said, any residents of Tower Hamlets can have a space to be buried there, and I will subsidize it, meaning Tower Hamlets, so they do not pay more than £1,000 as well. It started at 700, it's now just around £1,000. So this is in a borough who has got no land, but recognize the fact that our residents of Tower Hamlets should not be in any way compromised in terms of burial space because they've got no land, they do so. What about just outside? In Leicester, Oadby. Oadby has got a cemetery, but they've got no provision for a Muslim area. What did the council do? He says, listen, any Muslim residents, why don't you go to the main cemetery in Leicester, and we will subsidize that burial cost by £1,000. So I can continue to do so and give you examples, so many examples I can give you. So therefore, we are not asking something which is unique. We are only asking for something which has been done by other councils, and other people have done it. So why is it that some councils cannot do it? And as you quite correctly said, at the census in 2021, the Muslim population was 122 and the Christian was 123. Were you to take a census today, as of now, the Muslim community would be the Muslim community. So why is it that, being the majority of it, why is it that there is no provision made for the burial facilities? Why is it that the politicians have not been listening? We have been fighting this case for years, but obviously we are not voters. It doesn't matter to Newham whether we provide them or not. So this is why we decided that the best thing to do is to make sure that the community themselves take this initiative and ensure that they start to actually lobby the councils, and because it is your right to do so. And that is the reason. It's not that we have sat on our backside and said, let's not worry. No, we are worried about the Ummah. We're not worried about myself. We are worried about the Ummah, that they should be buried in a particular manner in terms of our record. That is why we started our conversations with Newham years ago. But regrettably, we were not being able to successfully. And as I said, the main reason being that for them, we don't really matter in terms of the votes, in terms of we don't pay council tax for them. That's the real reason. So our main concern also is that the residents of Newham have not benefited at all. The other residents of Newham have had burial provisions, okay, which the council has had to maintain. So which community has not had the funding? I leave it to you to decide. So I say, yes, Gardens of Peace is partially to blame. Maybe we shouldn't have done it, but then it's not a question
bigger
of
trouble
this.
then.
And it would have been in bigger trouble.
So honing back into Newham, I'd like for you to give us the actual figures of the people that have been buried. So just to bring to home how big the matter is, Could you let us know how many burials
Yes, I
for
can.
Newham residents have
I
taken
can.
place?
I can.
In
Since
the Garden of
2000,
Peace?
yeah, since we started in November 2002 till till the end of 2022, it was 2,400, of which 1,600s were adult. But if I add 2023 to it, the figures have now gone to 2,600, and the adults have now gone to about 1,800. So we bury every year approximately between 150 to 180 adults every year. And on top of it, there are children, fetuses, neonatal deaths. That also is also an additional, that is not included in 150. So you just imagine that had we not been around, where would you have buried the 2,600 people when the only provision made was in West Ham Cemetery for 50 graves 20 years ago? So you just tell me where. Even if we were, for example, not in existence, you had Woodgrange. Woodgrange would not have been able to cope with this number of people. So where would have the people been buried? That is the question people are not realizing and understanding, that why is it so important for us to actually focus on to say what's going to happen. Because remember one thing, our forefathers may have said an option, all right, if I die, I'm going to be sending my body back to Pakistan, Bangladesh, wherever that may be. The younger generation who have been born here, none of them are going to turn around and say, oh, I want my body to be taken back home. They're not. They want to be buried in this country. We are, after all, British. It is our country. We are first generation in this country. So why should we not make a provision for burial space as well? So that is in terms of the numbers. And as I said, that the Newham cemeteries, the only one which was given and owned by the council was West Ham. East London Cemetery, we do all of them. You look at the stats of 2021, people should look at it because it will give you the understanding to say, why is it that we have such a high level of Muslim population in this borough, a deprived borough, yet we are not being provided the facilities, not only with burials, but everything to do with end of life, everything to do with health inequalities. There are so many issues. As a Muslim community, are we being assertive enough? Are we being strategic enough? Are we ensuring that our priorities are being heard? Are we putting the right amount of pressure? These are the questions we should be asking ourselves.
Jazakallah. Before we move on to a solution, I think it's been very eye-opening and bit demoralizing, I suppose, as well for the locals of Newham. But alhamdulillah, there has been some work that's been done, which we will come to. Is there anything that Brother Kamran or Brother Zulfiqar would like to add before we wrap up this particular part of this show?
Very quick. Sorry,
Brother Zulfiqar, if you go first.
Yeah, I was just going to say this: if I was to summarize, that the blame really lies on three real. The success of Garden of Peace is one, and then the lack of realizing what the situation is by the population of Newham. When you consider that some figures are being given, but a third of the population is Muslim in Newham, yet we don't have a voice. And then obviously the third one is the local authority, which has the responsibility to provide a third of the population to there's no accommodation. Since 2002, when the Garden of Peace was created, that's where we took the foot off the gas in terms of burial spaces, and that's why we now it's come to a head that this COVID really is the period which actually brought it to the highlight that we. So inshallah, I think nothing's really not achievable. We can do this, and even now that we already making some headway with the local authority, and then come on the agenda, but really it is the masajids who've got to push this agenda, and the local residents, and that's where I think probably the next thing you're going to discuss, inshallah.
And Brother Kamran?
I think these days information is easily accessible to everyone. And by just searching on Google, you will find a whole list of local authorities, some with very minimum Muslim population, and they have the provision for Muslims. Whereas we already discussed that in last census. We were 34 point. Now, if we do it, we are the majority population in Newham. Muslims are the majority, but we don't have that provision. This is, I think, I mean, the stats and looking at the data, what Umar, it should be an eye opener for us. We shouldn't be really sitting and waiting for someone else to do our job. No, we have to get up and then do it ourselves. As I said, everyone has to ultimately go, and maybe we are doing it today, and that will help our future generations to come. But all of us has to come together as a united. Everyone has to work together to achieve this, inshallah.
Jazakallah. Okay, I'd like to move on because although we've spoken about all the negative aspects and elements, alhamdulillah, there is a silver lining. There is light at the end of the tunnel, as they may say. So Brother Kamran or Brother Zulfiqar, I'd like one of you to just give a little breakdown to the viewers and the listeners of what's happened in the last, let's say, 6 to 8 months with the formation of Newham Muslim Burial Association, and I think it's pretty clear what the aims and objectives are, but what have you done in the last 6-7 months, and where do you guys currently stand?
Okay, so we
Sorry,
had
go on.
this. Brother, you want to go ahead? I should. Okay. So in like the masjids who are providing the funeral services, we had this sort of get together, and we thought that this really needs to be discussed widely by all Muslims. So in July, we had one meeting in Fort Center, Rumford Road, where the initial idea was put forward to all the masjids in Newham. From there, then we held another meeting in Jama Masjid in November. I think we had about like 35 mosques on board, which at that time, then Newham Muslim Burial Association was sort of formed. We wouldn't say that this is a legal entity, but it is sort of an organization to work for this cause in Newham. After that, we have written to the local councillors. We had, thankful to the Garden of Peace and Brother Umar, we arranged visits for the local councillors to go and see the site themselves, and then have the first-hand knowledge and experience what really is needed. And alhamdulillah, I think we have, Brother Umar can confirm, I think we had about 25 plus councillors visited with 2 MPs and mayor. So that's a very good thing, because when we spoke to them on those times when they visited, I think some of them didn't realize that what the situation is, how serious that is. So that's a good positive step for us. Now we have engaged with the mayor. We had one meeting previously where we really discussed the idea, explained the issues and situation. We have another follow-up meeting coming up this next week, I think, where hopefully we will move one step ahead to find out what the real solution is. So our aim is to have the short, medium, and long-term strategy. So firstly, we discuss what really is available and can be done now at this stage, when for next few years, and what is the long-term strategy for the future of our generations in Europe.
Brother Zulfiqar, would you like to come in as well? I think you wanted to say something.
Yeah, I mean, the majority is said by Kamran, but the main gist of it was that we need to create this awareness that the mosques have to take a lead in this. Alhamdulillah, we managed to get quite a few started to unite on this, and we're making headway. And this is so important that I think the residents know that what the problem is as well, because they're the ones that use God. So what happens now is that we also, in line with the local authority to push it, we need to keep this pressure going. We can't just take a foot off. So what firstly would also like to, if Sajis are listening to this, to create this awareness, get this onto Jummah Khutbah, that there is a need for this. Unless people know that the pressure is not going to go, it's going to be enough. So I think it's essential that we all unite on this we have a lot of parent terms of population, and we can push the local authority to provide. And really, we are, this borough is very poor borough. The people have money, so we need a provision. Just sit on the provision, but also something which is affordable to the people. So I think we got to keep the pressure going. And dealing with the council, we're meeting with them on regular as a Newham Muslim Burial. But apart from that, it is the resident and the mosque.
Jazakallah. Your brother Zulfiqar's mic just keeps coming in and out. So if I just briefly explain, if anyone that's missed. So I believe that the NMBA was set up around about July, August time last year. So you had your first meeting at the Fraud Center, where you had about 10 to 15 mosques that came, and they were fully on board. And then from there, I think you slowly, obviously, got your feet under the table as an organization, started contacting further masajids, and then you had a second meeting in Jamia East Ham, where alhamdulillah it was a shock that you had 30 mosques, mashallah, under one roof. But it goes to show the need for the community as a whole, and it's not something that's specific to one maslak. It's everyone's going to taste death, as we've mentioned time and again. And then from there, I believe that some planning consultants were engaged, that were in contact with the council, and speeding it forward. We've got to a stage now where NMBA is directly dealing with the local authority.
Meeting in East Ham.
You've had a meeting with the mayor in East Ham Town Hall, which you have a follow-up in the next few days as well. So things are progressing. Brother Umar, would you like to add anything to this?
Yes, I certainly would. I mean, because you are saying that we've said everything negative. Let me give some positivity from here. I mean, we are extremely encouraged, and that means the whole team at Gardens of Peace, that this new team of NMBA are actually have taken this on board very seriously, and are actually making a lot of movements in the right direction. And that gives us a lot of encouragement to say all the mosques have been coming and so many mosques attended that. So that gives us a bit of encouragement and bit of comfort factor that no, this particular group are capable or enough of trying to take this matter forward. And lo and behold, as you've all noticed, and I'm sure Brother Kamran, Brother Zulfiqar, and Brother Omar yourself as well, you'll have noticed that for the first time, things are now beginning to work in terms of at least the council are now beginning to engage. Where can you have seen that, that they did not even recognize the provision for a burial need in the local development plan? And that was, and the excuse from them was, oh, it was just a draft, we didn't want it. But obviously they did not even want to consider it. But
could you go into a bit more detail for those that don't know what the local development plan is?
Yeah, a local development plan is something which it's like a budget and a strategy with each council plan for the next 5 years. What are they going to do in terms of services, be it schools, be it community centers, and this was for burials as well. So they did not even mention in that, and it was sent. The sad part about it was sent to all the organizations. A lot of Muslim organizations will have received it as well, but nobody commented on that. And therefore, one of the excuses the council have said that we did send out for consultation, but nobody responded on this issue. But fortunately, because we've highlighted it again, they are going to have another consultation round, perhaps later on during the course of this year. But what has been recognized for the first time, that in a council meeting, in a scrutiny meeting, they have actually tabled and recognized that there is a need for a statement and a position paper to be paid on it, say where and what are the burial facilities and provisions for the borough of Newham. So that has been a very positive move. You mentioned about some planners. Yes, what we did do, Gardens of Peace did try and assist and try and get a hold of a person who's a planning expert and very well versed in this element of provisions, and they did write to the council. And this is what really has triggered off a series of engagement for the first time whereby councillors have been pressured by mosques and residents that, do you know what the provisions are and what have you done so far? And that has really fruition has come to where a number of them have visited the cemetery. Both your MPs, right, Sir Stephen Timms and Lynn Brown, both of them have been to the cemetery, and both of them have actually been to the cemetery years ago. And I still recall that both of them, even at that time, were very positive in terms of trying to support any initiative. But remember, really, they will only do as much as what their constituents will push for them. And I think for the first time, there is recognition within our community that, yes, listen, this Gardens of Peace got a third site, but it means I'm going to have to travel even further. They already complained going to Gardens of Peace in Five Oaks, but so they're going to have to go even further. So I think first time the realization has actually dawned upon the community that, one, there is a significant issue about lack of burial space, but more important is that if we do not push for now, we may have to go even further and further away to ensure that our loved ones are buried in a manner according to Islamic principles. So I think this is the realization which has come through, and this is why we are so happy that the formation of the Newham Muslim Burial Association. And I don't think I have heard anything negative from anybody about this association, because this is one platform which has been created, and inshallah this platform, which is on burial issues, has brought unity. And as you said, Umar, there's nothing to do with maslak or anything of that nature. Inshallah, let us hope that this is the beginning of a unity. And this is the beginning of issues which we can, as a community, try and focus upon to say, listen, we are Muslims. Let us work together. Let us concentrate on commonalities. Let us not try and spend time on any divisions or any negativities. This is where you are there. And we are grateful because most of the people on the NMBA are young people, not old people like us. So obviously,
you're young.
So we are encouraged that the new generation has taken over, and you are the new generation who are running mosques. So you have taken over this particular projects on, and we will definitely support you in any manner we can, because it is in the interest of not Gardens of Peace, it is in the interest of the Muslim community that there is adequate burial provision for the entire Muslim community in the entire country.
Jazakallah. We're just going to go on a brief break, but we want everyone to return after the break, because we're going to discuss the most important aspect, what you as an individual can do now. So this isn't what you as your mosque can do or what the community as a whole can do. We want to basically pierce into each individual and see what you can do to make a difference towards this. So please bear with us 3 to 4 minutes, and we will be going all the way up until Iftar. So please do remain with us. We'll be back after these short messages. Jazakallah.
Hey Sainsbury's, if you want to advertise your business on Revive FM, then visit www.revivefm.co.uk. Alternatively, contact our sales team now on 07944 56 5616. That's 07944 56 5616.
Thinking about selling or letting your home? With Maxwell Estates, you don't need to look any further. Well established with over 15 years of experience, Maxwell Estates are specialists in residential sales and lettings. We manage over 200 properties in and around Northwest London, keeping our landlords and tenants updated with all the latest laws and legislations. Based in Edgware, our experienced specialist negotiators always ensure we maximize the full potential of your property. Call us now on 0208 952 0808 for a free no-obligation quotation, or visit our website www.maxwellestates.co.uk for further information. Maxwell Estates, the name you can trust.
Minhaj School of Islamic Sciences provides quality Islamic education for children aged between 5 and 15 years old. As well as teaching classical Islam, including Tajweed, Fiqh, Seerah and Aqidah, we endeavour to equip children with essential Islamic manners, morals and values. Here at MSIS, our experienced teachers create an inspirational learning environment where we strive to cater for the needs of every child. For enrollment inquiries, inquire in person at Minhaj School of Islamic Sciences, Monday to Friday, 5 to 7 p.m. at 292-296 Rumford Road, or email admin.edu_london@minhajuk.org.
आइए एक ऐसी दुनिया का तस्वुर करें जहां हर नौजवान जहन को पनपने और फलने फूलने का मौका दिया जाए। मिनहाज वेलफेयर फाउंडेशन का शुक्रिया। ये ख्वाब इस रमजान में हकीकत बन सकता है। हम मुल्क भर में 600 से ज्यादा तालीमी इदारों की निगरानी कर रहे हैं और 2.5 लाख से ज्यादा स्कॉलरशिप्स पर अमल दरामद कर चुके हैं। 15 पाउंड माहाना या 160 पाउंड सालाना के साथ आप एक तालिब इल्म की तालीम को स्पॉन्सर कर सकते हैं, जिससे वो अपना मुस्तकबिल न सिर्फ रोशन कर सकता है बल्कि एक मुफीद शहरी बनकर एक फलाही मुआशरे की तश्कील में मदद कर सकता है। आपकी मदद से हम एक ऐसी दुनिया बना सकते हैं जहां मयारी और मुफ्त तालीम सबके लिए मुहैया हो। अपनी ज़कात, सदकात या खैरात देने के लिए हमारे
Revive FM
94.0 on the radio,
on your mobile
and online.
When you send money to your family for Ramadan, send it with Remitly. Because our great rates and low fees mean that more money makes it to your loved ones. Millions of people trust Remitly to send money to Pakistan, Bangladesh and many more countries worldwide. Ramadan Kareem from Remitly, wishing you a peaceful time. Download the Remitly app. Remitly UK Limited is authorized and regulated by the FCA.
Imagine a world where every young mind is given the chance to flourish and thrive. Thanks to your kind donations, this dream can become a reality this Ramadan. Minhaj Welfare Foundation is the driving force behind over 600 educational institutions and have provided over 250,000 scholarships. With only £15 per month or £160 per year, you can pay for a student's education, shaping futures and creating a world where education is not a luxury but a right for all. The donor will receive an education progress report. To donate your zakat, sadaqah or charitable donations, visit your local MWF office at 12 Carr Road, Nelson, BB9 7JS. Call us on 01282 723 455 or visit our website at www.minhajwelfare.org. Stay connected on Facebook, Instagram and Twitter for the latest videos and updates.
Hey Sainsbury's, do you have any super simple suggestions for suhoor?
Sure, we've got plenty of ideas to help you through the fast. Overnight oats are both fast and flavoursome. Or get cracking before the crack of dawn with some delicious free-range eggs. And make Iftar even tastier with the many halal meats on offer. So that's Iftar and suhoor sorted.
Need some quick ideas for suhoor and iftar? Ask Sainsbury's. Ramadan Mubarak. Sainsbury's. Good food for all of us.
Subject to availability while stocks last, selected stores only.
Revive FM
94.0 on the radio,
on your mobile
and online.
Nikah, talaq, counseling on matrimonial disputes, Islamic wills, Islamic law of inheritance, or an Islamic verdict on any.
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Jazakallah khair. Thank you very much for all our listeners and viewers. We are back. Our special show today on Newham Muslim Burial Association. We've got Brother Kamran from Jamia East Ham. We've got Brother Zulfiqar from UKIM Masjid Ibrahim. And we've got the legend himself, Brother Umar from Gardens of Peace. So before we went on to the break, we gave a breakdown to all our viewers on what the current state of play is in terms of burials and burial provisions in Newham and the lack of them. The solution that was provided 20 years ago with Gardens of Peace, but how we need more provisions, otherwise Garden of Peace, I think you've mentioned as well, within 5-6 years, but they're not going to have any space left. So, Brother Umar, before we move forward, could you just delve into what you had to do with Tower Hamlets during COVID? And God forbid, if nothing is done, this is probably what you will be having to say to all other boroughs as well. What specifically was that conversation that you had with Tower Hamlets when they wanted to bury their own at the Garden of Peace?
So the conversation at that time during pandemic, you must all be very mindful that we were going through a very traumatic time at that time. And what we had to take a decision is that Is it right for Muslims to be delayed in the burial when there is a provision already made for certain communities in certain areas? And that was the decision we had to take very painfully, to say that, do we allow people to wait for 2 to 3 weeks when, if you're a resident of Tower Hamlets, you could be buried within a couple of days or so. So what we were trying to just focus on at that time was to make sure that any available Muslim spaces were utilized as quickly as possible, so that there was nobody who was going to be delayed for longer than necessary. So that was the conversation. We are now faced in the conversation is completely different, because we are now going to be faced with a decision whereby we may have to just stop all burials because we do not have any space, and that's the issue. But what we're also trying to say, that if we don't see any movement from councils to try and do something for their residents, then obviously it becomes a question, how do we make them act? Do we do something which will then make them wake up or not? Or do we just keep on saying, in a very low-key manner, keep on pushing, keep on pushing? We've been doing that for the last 15 years. Keep on pushing, keep on pushing. One thing I would like to mention, and this is a positivity, that had it not been for the pandemic, none of the masajids would have upped their game in trying to ensure that the funeral services side of it was up to speed. And I'm telling you this, that had it not been for the masajids like yourselves and Minhaj-ul-Quran, Jamia, Masjid Ibrahim, all of them, had you not provided the service, there is no way we would have been able to bury the number of people who would have done that. That is a fact. Just to give you an example, that in those 2 years, 16th of March 2020 to 16th of March 2022, Newham residents alone, adults alone, during that 2 years was almost 600 people. Can you imagine? And we buried in those 2 years just a shade under 4,000 people. So there was a lot of things to go through. My question to you now, I know you're coming on to the fact that what the people do. Let me start it off by this. Every one of your musalli, when they die or something happens in their family, and if there was no provision, which was not there at Minhaj-ul-Quran till only recently, the first thing is say, why should we go and do our ghusl at someone else? All my life, I prayed in this masjid. I want my ghusl, my salatul janaza to take place in this masjid. That made you open up funeral services. That made open, same as Masjid Ibrahim, same as Jamia, same as a lot of other mosques. But why is it that the musallis are not asking that, yes, we've got our own Muslim facilities in terms of ghusl at our mosque. What about burial space? Why have they not questioned that? Why is that not being the question which people should also ask? They're asking about providing for the ghusl. But remember, you have to bury the person as well. So why have people not asked that question? This is what I'm trying to understand, is that nobody thought about it, or they were just comforted by the fact that Gardens of Peace is there and it will be there for eternity. So I think that could have been one of the reasons. I'm not sure and I'm not speculating, but I can just assume that that might be the reason. So this is why your last part of this is to ensure that what can the residents do? And I can only say a few things, but it's better if people from the NMBA expect and tell and inform their own fellow residents what they should be doing.
So, Brother Kamran, as you've mentioned, fantastic work that the NMBA is doing, whereby I believe you've had in excess of 25 councillors that have actually gone and visited Gardens of Peace. And for some of the, I've spoken to you offline, some of the feedback that they've given you is quite astonishing, that some councillors didn't even know that all Muslims get buried. Some were of the impression that we get cremated as well. So there's a lack of understanding on that side. So could you let us know where you are currently with NMBA, where you've taken it to, and where you need now the support of the locals and what they can do?
Before I question this, I will just ask our viewers and listeners, if they're still in doubt about the seriousness of the situation, please go and have visit Garden of Peace and just only look at the section which was filled in COVID.
4,000, you just mentioned 4,000 in 2 years.
Just I think visually, if you look at just that section which was filled in COVID, it is, I can't even describe it. It's really that hard. So now coming to, I think now we have started this process of engaging with the council, and council are hopefully recognizing this need. Our listeners, our masjids, our viewers, whoever they are, wherever they are, I think they need to have this personal contact, personal communication with the councillors, with the authorities, so that personal touch and that personal communication will make sure that these councillors and these politicians are always aware where we are. And also this in kind of encourages our own people to be aware of the situation. So if you are engaged and you take this ownership of this whole process, I wouldn't think that it's hard for us to achieve. But we all have to work, as I said previously, together. We all have to engage in our own means. Many of us know certain councillors, certain politicians, certain people who are can influence this process. So I think we all need to take this responsibility. We all need to spread this word. We all need to create this awareness. We all need to ensure that they understand that this Muslim needs that. And as we earlier on said, that quite a few councillors, when we explained to them that we have to kind of bury our people as soon as possible, they were quite astonished, because they thought that we have weeks and months to prepare and then we can. So I think those things are quite important when people are making the decisions. And if they are aware of these issues, then I think our work can be easy. We can resolve that easily.
Inshallah. So, Brother Zulfiqar, if I just bring you in as well, in terms of your masjid and the funerals that you've conducted over the past few years, what are you telling your congregation now, as a whole? So, mashallah, is one of the biggest mosques in Newham, Masjid Ibrahim. So, what are you telling your congregation what they can do in order for them to get involved with NMBA and to lobby and put the pressure on the local politicians and councillors in order to secure some kind of burial provisions in Newham?
What I would be telling our congregation and also the people listening here is to just go on the Newham website, search for your councillors. You have 3 councillors, and just type in your postcode and you'll get your ward. And now there's 2 ways to contact your councillors. One is they have a regular surgeries every fortnight, and you can go there personally, make an appointment to see your councillor, and then actually put that case to them that you want this provision for space for Muslims. And secondly, the other way you can do it, and there is email addresses of all the councillors on the website as well. You can write to them, send an email to them, and also you can write to your 2 MPs, Stephen Timms and Lynn Brown. Those 2, you can find their contacts on the website as well. And when you do that, put your case in writing and then copy into the mayor as well, so that she's aware that there is a pressure. So local councillors need to know this, and also your local MPs, and then the mayor. What would this do is to sustain the pressure on what the meetings we're having with the council. So we're not going away. We're gonna resolve this problem for the borough. And so I think the other things we need to do is to actually have mention this on regular basis on khutbahs as well, as I said before, and that awareness has to continue until we get this. As somebody said earlier, that we need a short solution and a medium term, and then the long term, which is sustainable. And this is not go away. So to achieve our goal, inshallah.
Jazakallah. We're just coming up to obviously wrapping up. There's only a few minutes left till Iftari. There's plenty of people that are listening in. There's plenty of people that are watching as well on YouTube and Facebook. And if anybody that's been inspired, that would like to get involved, that would like to put their expertise or their 2 cents worth into this, we would request for you to contact the Newham Muslim Burial Association directly, and I can provide you the email address now. It's Newham Muslim Burial Association @gmail.com. Not very unique in that sense, but if you want to get involved, if you have any ideas, it's important, as both brothers Zulfiqar and brother Kamran have mentioned, that they've obviously set up this group now, and it's a steering group that's taking things forward. But it's vitally important that we have, and they have, the support of the local people living here, because it is, like brother Umar said as well, Garden of Peace is no entity really when it comes to their stake within the council. The people that have the stake are the people that live here, the ones that pay their council tax, the ones that have to deal on a day-to-day basis. It is those people that are going to have the most sway when they go forward and they approach their councillors and the local MP. And we know how politics works as well. You have to push your whatever you want done, and you have to make that quite clear and concise to the people that are authority above. Otherwise, they will not take these kind of matters seriously at all. So the encouragement will come from NMBA with them doing the work, and we commend them, and we commend obviously Garden of Peace that have are helping them in an advisory role. But I think it's important, and I'll obviously hand over the last words to brother Umar, but I believe it's vitally important that each and every individual that is living in Newham, they get involved and they approach the relevant people, so that this issue doesn't die down. At the moment, it's Ramadan, everyone's really, really active, and they might listen to this and think, okay, this is a fantastic initiative and we need to ensure this is done. But we're talking about something 3 months down the line, when all the noise has died down. We need to keep the pressure on, I believe. That's probably the best way to put it. Brother Umar, if there's anything else that you'd like to add, and then I'd like for you to conclude and do dua so we can finish the show.
Just a few points I just wanted to pick up. I think it's a responsibility for every resident of Newham, Muslim resident, to try and understand what the need is and support. So whenever the NMBA is calling for a meeting, it is important and it's vital and it's essential that people do come and participate in this. It cannot be left to other people to do it. All of those people who are running the NMBA are volunteers. They've got their own full-time jobs. So it's the more people who can get involved in it and assist to ensure that this project can continue and come to fruition. It will be much more appreciated from them perspective as well. And secondly, the most important thing is the fact that what you need to understand is the fact that, remember, when the councillors want your vote, they knock on your door and they give you stuff. So why is it not that you turn the tables around? You knock on them and say, well, listen, when you needed my vote, I gave it to you. Today, I need your help. And if this is for the Muslim community, this is definitely going to be an issue for which we will not want to vote until we know what's happening on this provision. And I think if you do that, that would be the most important thing you can get, and get people active. As you're quite correctly saying, that sometimes what happens, it's like when you open a bottle of fizzy drink. After a while, the fizz settles down and people forget about it. The momentum has to continue. There is no relapse until you have got certainty and you've got commitment in writing from the council what the proposals will be in terms of short, medium, and long term. Until you get that, you cannot rest. And this will be there. And what you're trying to do today, NMBA, is I'm trying to make sure that you're planting seeds for generations to come. This is your responsibility. You will be remembered. You need to leave a legacy as well, to say, no, this community in this day and age managed to secure this provision for the Muslim community for years to come. And that would be my message.
Jazakallah. Brother Kamran?
Very, very quickly, lastly, I think I would plea and request all masjid committees and masjids. We have, alhamdulillah, over 45 masjids and Muslim organizations in Newham. We all need to take this as our own. We all need to own this process. We all need to work with our communities, with our residents, to guide them and to educate them how to achieve this. And I say NMBA is there, but you are the real people for us. We can't do without you. So I say, please get involved, help us, and be with us on this.
Exactly. Just one final thing again. If anybody wants to get involved or would like further clarification or information with regards to the Newham Burial Association, you can get in contact with them via email at Newham Muslim Burial Association @gmail.com. Brother Zulfiqar, would you like to say anything, or will be just concluding now, inshallah? Oh God, I believe the mic is muted. Unfortunately, we can't hear them. Brother Umar, I'd request for you to just do dua right at the end. Brother Zulfiqar, I think he's just come back on screen. If you can just say some final words, inshallah.
Really, emphasis has to be that we've got to maintain the pressure on the council to get what we want. And as I said earlier, that we need to get all the residents to put a pressure on them by writing to them, and keep that pressure. Be a nuisance to them until don't if they don't reply, write again. Email is probably the easiest way to contact them, inshallah. And inshallah, we will get there. We'll have a success, and hopefully by next Ramadan we'll have some sort of facility, inshallah.
Inshallah. I'd like to hand over to Brother Umar to do a dua, and want to thank each and everyone that's listened and watched the show. And we would request you to share the link far and wide, so as many people can benefit from the discussion that we had today. Jazakallah.
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين والعاقبة للمتقين والصلاة والسلام على رسول الله ربنا آتنا في الدنيا حسنة وفي الآخرة حسنة وقنا عذاب النار ربنا تقبل منا إنك أنت السميع العليم وتب علينا يا مولانا إنك أنت التواب الرحيم ربنا لا تزغ قلوبنا بعد إذ هديتنا وهب لنا من لدنك رحمة إنك أنت الوهاب. Ya Allah, please ensure that this particular organization have really put a lot of effort into trying to ensure that there's a Muslim burial provision. Almighty, make this organization a success. Almighty, give the community of Newham the ability to work together. Almighty, give them steadfastness. Almighty, this is the month of Ramadan. All of us have fasted, Almighty. All of us are making ibadah. Almighty, please make sure you accept our ibadah in this holy month of Ramadan. Almighty, let this month not pass without you forgiving us. Almighty, please make sure that you protect every one of us. Almighty, so many of our relatives and our brothers and sisters and mothers and fathers have passed away. Almighty, make sure that you ensure that all the graves are part of Jannah. Almighty, illuminate the graves, and Almighty, grant them the highest status in Jannah, Jannatul Firdaus. Almighty, give the family members who have been left behind, Almighty, give them the ability to cope with the loss. Ya Allah, there'll be so many people who will be spending the first Ramadan without their parents or without their loved ones. Almighty, for them it will be so difficult today. Almighty, give them sabr. Almighty, give them sabr. Almighty, before we leave this world, give us an opportunity to prepare for our final destination. Almighty, our brothers and sisters are suffering. They're suffering all over the world. Ya Allah, they're suffering in Syria, they're suffering in Yemen, but most importantly, they're suffering in Palestine. Almighty, please give them steadfastness. Whoever has lost their life, Ya Allah, give them the status of a martyr. Or who is injured, Ya Allah, give them the full recovery. And who have been displaced, Ya Allah, give them better abodes. Almighty, give us unity as an ummah. Almighty, give us unity as an ummah. And Almighty, make us good Muslims, Ya Allah. Ya Allah, give us the ability to respect each other. Almighty, we would like to thank Revive Radio for giving us the opportunity to pass and center this message to all of the residents and all those who have been listening. Almighty, give them barakah. Almighty, give them the ability to continue this message of deen, and ensuring that the message of deen is passed away far and wide. Almighty, all those brothers who have taken the initiative, who have been part of NMBA, Almighty, ensure that you raise their status as well and give them the steadfastness that they require, Ya Allah. Ya Allah, please ensure that you make it easy for us, make it easy for the Muslim Ummah, Ya Allah. Ya Allah, we ask you to accept this humble prayer of us. Subhana rabbika rabbil izzati amma yasifun. Wassalamu alal mursalin walhamdulillah.
Amen. Jazakallah khair.
This Iftari is sponsored by the Wahbeh Restaurant in Gants Hill, Ilford, and Plashett Carpets in Upton Park.
اللهم صل وسلم وبارك على سيدنا ومولانا محمد النبي الأمي وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين. اللهم إني لك صمت وبك آمنت وعليك توكلت وعلى رزقك أفطرت. وصلى الله تعالى على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه برحمتك يا أرحم الراحمين.
الله أكبر الله أكبر الله أكبر. أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله. أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله. أشهد أن محمدًا رسول الله. أشهد أن محمدًا رسول الله. حي على الصلاة. حي على حي على الفلاح. حي على الله أكبر الله أكبر. لا إله إلا الله.
اللهم صل على سيدنا ومولانا محمد وعلى آله في الأولين. اللهم صل على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه في الآخرين. اللهم صل وسلم وبارك على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه في الملأ الأعلى إلى يوم الدين. اللهم رب هذه الدعوة التامة والصلاة القائمة آت سيدنا ومولانا محمد الوسيلة والفضيلة والدرجة الرفيعة وابعثه مقاما محمودا الذي وعدته وارزقنا شفاعته يوم القيامة إنك لا تخلف الميعاد.
This iftari is sponsored by the Wahbeh restaurant in Gants Hill, Ilford, and Plashett Carpets in Upton Park.